So today the topic that we're going to look at is factorization. Then under factorization, we're going to look at general procedure for factorizing a trinomial. So now what we're going to do now is we're going to factorize a trinomial in this form, where x squared doesn't have the coefficient of x squared is 1. So we're going to look at situation where our coefficient for x squared is 1, right? So let's do that. Let me do an example. So now let's look at example number 1. We see the fact that our trinomial or our expression is x squared plus 8x plus 15. We see that what? The coefficient of x squared is equals to 1. So it's in this form. So what we do to factorize this, we need to look at two things. We need to look at c, which is in our case c is equals to 15. And we need to look at b, which is in our case b is equals to 8. Right? So what it says is that we need to find the factors of 15 so that when we multiply those two factors, right, we get C. And when we add those two factors, we get what? We get B. So that's what we need to do. So let me take 15. So we know the fact that 15, right? Let's find the factors of 15. We know the fact that it's going to be 1 multiplied by 15, right? Then it's going to be what? It's going to be 3 multiplied by 5. So these are the only two factors of 15, right? So after finding the factors of 15, we need to do what? We need to add them together. We know the fact that when we multiply them together, we're going to get 15, right? So now we need to check when we add them together, are we going to get 8? So let's take the second one with the first one, the first factors, right? Let's add them together. If we say 1 plus 15, what do we get? We get 16, right? So we did not get what? 8. So this factor does not work, right? Then we take the other one, which is 3 plus 5, what do we get? We get 8. So we see the fact that when we multiply the two factors, we get 8. And when we add them, we get, and when we multiply the two factors, we get 15, right? And when we add them together, we get 8. So these are the factors that we're going to use to factorize. So this one is the correct one. So we're going to write our two brackets. You're going to say equals to, then we're going to write our two brackets. Then you're going to say x. Then you're going to put x here. Then you're going to say what? Plus 3. Then you're going to say plus 3. Because the factors that you'd use was positive 3 multiplied by positive 5. That's why it's plus 3 and plus 5, not 3. Plus 3 and plus 5. So this will be your final answer after factorizing. Now let's look at example number 2, not example number 4. Example number 2, right? We said we look at what? We look at C, which is in our case is 8, and we look at B, which is in our case is positive 9, right? We want factors so that when we multiply the two factors, we get positive 8, and when we add them, we get 9. So let's find the factors of 8. So now let's find the factors of 8. So we know that the factors of 8 is going to be what? To get a positive 8 is going to be 1 multiplied by 8. And the other one is going to be what? The other one is going to be 2 multiplied by 4. And these are the only factors, right? So now we know the fact that when we multiply this 2, we're going to get 8. So we both get 8 here when we multiply them together. Now we have satisfied this condition, right, for both of them. So now let's check which factors we're going to use so that when we add the two terms, we need to get 9. So let's do that. If we take 1 plus 8, what do we get? We get 9. So we see the fact that when we add the two terms, we get 9. So this factor, these two factors satisfies our 2 condition. When we multiply the 2 condition, we get 8. And when we add them, we get 9. So this is the factors that we're going to use. So let's use them. So you're going to say equals to, you're going to open 2 brackets, right? Then you're going to say x here and x here. The reason why we write x and x here, because of the coefficient of x is 1, right? The coefficient of x squared is 1. Then we're going to say, since it's plus 1, so you're going to say plus 1. Then you're going to say plus 8. And you are done factorizing this question. So now let's look at example number 3. We have x squared minus 2x minus 15. right? As I said, the fact that we look at what? We look at C to get our factors, our two brackets, and we look at what? And we look at B, right? Which is -2. So we know the fact that what you call this C is -15. We know that C is equals to -15. We need to find the factors of -15. So the first factors are what? It's -1 multiplied by 15. And the second one is 1 multiplied by -15, right? And the second factors are what? Is going to be 2. No, it's going to be 3. -3 multiplied by what? Multiplied by 5. Then the second one is going to be what? +3 multiplied by -5. So we know the fact that if we multiply all of them, it's going to give you -15. It's going to give you -15. Here it's going to give you -15. And it's going to give you -15. So we know the fact that everything that we did here is going to satisfy this condition. So the one that we need to find is, it needs to satisfy this condition and this condition. And the one to get B is that when we add them together, we need to get B, which is in our case, we need to get -2. So let's take the first one. If we say -1 plus 15, what do we get? We get +14. So this one does not work because we get -14 and we need -2. We get +14 and we need -2. Let's take the second one. If we say +1 plus -15, what do we get? We get -14. So this one doesn't satisfy because we need -2, not -14. The third one is going to be -3 plus 5. And what do we get? We're going to get +2. So this one doesn't work because we need a -2, not a +2. Then the last one says 3 plus open bracket -5. We're going to get -3. So this one satisfies our condition. So the two factors that we're going to use is this one. Because when we multiply the two factors, we get -15. And when we add the two factors, we get -2, not -3. We get -2, right? So let's write our two brackets. When you're going to put X here, and you're going to put X here. Then our factors is +3, then what? -5. So this will be your final answer. Now we're going to look at examples where we're dealing with factorizing -x² plus bx plus c when our coefficient for x² is when a is equals to -1. So we're going to factorize questions that are in this form. So when a question is in this form, right, what we need to do is we need to take out the negative sign. We need to change the coefficient. We need to change the sign of x² and we need to make it positive. And to do that, we need to take out -1 as being a common factor. So what happens if we take -1 as a common factor? Every term sign is going to change. If it was negative, it's going to become positive. And if it was positive, it's going to become negative. So let's do that. If we take out -1, what we're going to have? We're going to have x², which is positive, and this one's going to change into plus x, and the last one's going to change into -20. So that's what we're going to have. Since this is not an equation and it's an expression, we need to have our answer like that, like this, which is x² plus x minus 20. But we are not done because you need to factorize this. Now, we know the fact that when we factorize, we need to multiply two terms so that we get what? The c value, which is in our case is 20. So we know that c is equals to -20. And we need to do what? This is 1. The in front of x is going to be an imaginary one. Like, it's not an imaginary, it's going to be a 1. Since it's 1, we don't write it down. And when we add them together, what do we need to get? We need to get this. We need to get +1. So we know that b is equals to +1. So let's find the factors of -20. Right? We have 1 multiplied by -20 being the first one, and -1 multiplied by what? By 20, right? The second one is going to be 2 multiplied by -10, and it's going to be -2 multiplied by +10. The other one is going to be what? It's going to be 4 multiplied by 5, then it's going to be negative 4. Now what you call this, negative 4 multiplied by positive 5. So this is negative 5, right? So these are the factors for what you call this, the factors of 20, right? Now we know the fact that when we multiply each and one of them, we're going to get negative 20. So we know the fact that we are satisfied the first condition. Now we need to see whether we can are we going to satisfy the second one. So now we need to add them together. If we say 1 plus negative 20, what do we get? We get negative 19. So this one does not work, right? If we say negative 1 plus 20, what we're going to get? Positive 19. So this one does not work because of we need a positive 1. Then here, if we say what? If we say 2 plus negative 10, what we're going to get? Negative 8, which does not satisfy this, so it's not going to be satisfied. If we say negative 2 plus 10, what do we get? We get what? Positive 8, which does not satisfy this. If we say 4, right, plus negative 5, what do we get? We get negative 1, which does not satisfy because we want a positive 1. And the last one, if we say negative 4 plus 5, what do we get? We get a positive 1. So this one satisfies. So these are the factors that you're going to use in the bracket. So then we write our two brackets. You're going to write your minus, open two brackets like this. Then you're going to say x here. Then you're going to say x here. Then what you're going to do here, you're going to say minus 4. And this one is going to be plus 5. So this will be your final solution for this question. So now let's look at factorizing, factorizing a trinomial in this form, where a is an actual number. It could be 2, 3, it depends on the situation, right? So in this one, what we need to look at, we're going to look at A, B, and C, right? So we know from the previous one, we looked at C and B. In this case, we're going to look at C. Then C, when we look at it, it's going to be combined with A, right? Then we're going to look at the last one, which is B, right? Using the same rules, but it's going to differ a little. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to take A and C, which is in our case, A is equals to 2 and C is equals to negative 3. What we need to do is we need to multiply A and B. So we need to multiply A and C. And so when we multiply A and C, in our case, A is 2. So we're going to say 2 multiplied by negative 3, which is we're going to get negative 6, right? Then this is going to be the one where we find our factors from. So we're going to find our factors from here. Then so that when we multiply the two factors, we get negative 6. And when we add them, we get, which is B, which is going to be, in our case, B is going to be positive 5, right? So let's take this one and find its factors. So we could say negative 6. Factors for negative 6 is going to be negative 1 multiplied by positive 6. And the other one is going to be 1 multiplied by 6. And the other one is going to be negative 2 multiplied by 3. And the other one is going to be 2 multiplied by 3, right? Now we have the factors of negative 6. We know if we multiply each of the factors, we're going to get negative 6. So now we want to get positive 5. So when we add the two together, we need to get positive 5 so that we can know which factor to use. So let's do that. If we say negative 1 plus 6, what do we get? We get what? Positive 5. So we see the fact that this one is going to be our factor. Because of when we multiply it together, what do we get? We get negative 6, and we add them together, we get positive 5. But in this case, we are not done. Let me do it in another color. We're not done. We know that our factors are going to be negative 1 and positive 6. To find the two brackets, we need to take this factors and divide it by A, which is, in our case, A is 2. So we're going to divide by A, right? So we know the fact that A is 2, so you're going to be 1 divided by positive 2. And the other one is going to be 6 divided by 2. After knowing that, we know the fact that what's going to happen is we need to simplify this. Sorry, there is no equal signs. If we simplify this, it's going to be 1 divided by 2. And the other one is going to be what you call this? 6 divided by 2 is going to be 3. So you're going to write it in a fraction form. So it's going to be 3 divided by 1, right? The reason why I'm writing in the fraction form, because we're going to need the fraction to complete this, right? So let me write this here. So we know the fact that we have negative 1 over 2 and 2 factors and 3 divided by 1. Then let's write out our 2 brackets. So these are going to be our 2 brackets. So the fraction helps us in writing the bracket. The denominator of the fraction is going to be the one that is going to be the coefficient of x. So here, since here it's 2, this side is going to be 2x. And since here is 1, this side is going to be just x, right? And we know the fact that the numerator is going to be the number that follows this one. So it's going to be negative 1 here. And here it's going to be plus 3. And this will be your final answer for factorizing this. Now, let's look at this question, right? We know the fact that to factorize this, since a has a value, it's not 1 or negative 1, what we need to do is we need to look at c, which is negative 1. We need to look at a, which is positive 3, right? If we say a, another color, if we say a multiplied by c is going to be what? 3 multiplied by negative 1, which is equal to negative 3. This is the one that we need to find the factors for, right? Then we also need b, so that when we add them together, we get this value, right? Which is in our case, b is equals to positive 2, right? Let's go find the factors of negative 3. So we know the fact that the factors of negative 3 is going to be 1 multiplied by negative 3 and also negative 1 multiplied by positive 3, right? And these are the only factors, right, to get negative 3. So we know the fact that if we add these 2 factors, we are going to get what? We're going to get negative 3. Now we need to add them together. So we know that the first condition is satisfied. Now we need to add them together to see which one, when we add them together, we get a positive 2. So the first one is going to be 1 plus negative 3. And what do we get? We get a negative 2. So this one does not work because we want a positive 2, not a negative 2. And the second one is going to be negative 1 plus what? Plus 3, which is we're going to get a positive 2. So this one works because when we multiply them together, we get a negative 3. And when we add them together, we get a positive 2. But in this case, we are not done. Let me change the color so that we can go to the next part. In this case, we're not done. We're going to take the 2 factors, which is negative 1 and 3, and we're going to divide it by the coefficient of a, which is the coefficient of x squared. No, we're going to divide it by a, which is the coefficient of x squared. If we do that, if we divide it by 3, if we say a, just for you guys to see, and we say negative 1 divided by 3, and it's going to be 3 divided by 3, right? And when we simplify it, negative 1 divided by 3 is going to be negative 1 divided by 3. Then the other one, when we simplify it, it's going to be what? It's going to be positive 1. But remember the fact that our answer, we always write it in a fraction way. So our 2 factors now is going to be negative 1 over 3 and 1 over 1, right? Then let's write our 2 brackets. When we write our 2 bracket, the denominator of each gives us the one that's going to have the x. So here we have 3, so it's going to be 3x. And here we have 1, so it's going to be just x, right? Then the numerator is going to give us the term that follows. So here is going to be negative 1, and here is going to be plus 1. And here you are done factorizing. Now let's look at this example. I forgot which number it is. Yeah, but like now let's look at this example, right? Now let's look at the situation where our a is no longer positive but it's negative. So we're going to do the same thing that we did when we had a negative 1, right? When a was negative 1. So we're going to take out the negative sign outside. When we take out the negative, everything that's inside, everything in the expression, the signs are going to change. The ones that are negative are going to become positive. The ones that are positive are going to become negative. So that's what we're going to do. It's going to be 7x squared minus 6x minus 1. Right? And now we're going to factorize this. We know the fact that since now a is not 1 or negative 1, what do we need to do? We need to multiply a and b. So we know the fact that this is our C, A and C. Sorry. So we're going to say A multiplied by C is going to be equals to 7 multiplied by -1, which is gives us 7, right? And the other one is that we're going to need what? Our B value, which is our B value. When we add the two factors, we need to get B, which in our case is -6. So let's find the factors of -7. So we know the fact that the factors of -7 is going to be -1 multiplied by +7, then it's going to be +1 multiplied by -7, right? And these are the only factors. So now what we know the fact that we've satisfied the first condition, but let's satisfy the next condition, which is this one. When we add them, we need to get a +6. So if we say -1 plus 7, what are we going to get? We're going to get a +6. So this is not the factor because of we need a -6. And the second one is going to be 1 plus -7, and what do we get? We get a -6. So this one is our factors, right? But with this one we are not done. We need to do what? No, sorry. This one we're not done. We need to take the factors and divide it by the what you call is the coefficient of x squared, which is a. So it's going to be, our factors is 1 and -7. We need to both divide it by a. So when we both divide it by a, it's going to be what? 1 divided by, what's a? 7. And also we're going to have -7 divided by 7. Then when we simplify that, it's going to be 1 divided by 7. And when we simplify this, it's going to be -1. So it's going to be -1 divided by 1 because we always need to write it in a fraction form. Then after when we're done, what we're going to do is we're going to open two brackets. The denominator in each factor is going to be what? Sorry, the denominator in each fraction is going to be the one that has the x. So it's going to be 7x, and here it's going to be just x because it's 1 multiplied by x, right? Then it's going to be, the numerator is the number that follows. Here it's going to be +1, and here it's going to be -1. And this is your final answer.